going to go ahead and I hope everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the September 18th meeting. Were there any changes to the minutes? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Representative Helgerson.
Make the motion to adopt the amendments or the,
Already making amendments?
yeah, I'm doing an amendment. No, the minutes from the 18th.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Senator Schallenberger. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, minutes are passed. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the presentation of the Build Kansas Fund structure. So I would ask that Matthew Volz with the Kansas Infrastructure Hub and on behalf of the Build Kansas Steering Committee. Mr. Volz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for having me today, having us here today. Welcome, Representative Anderson, to your first meeting. Appreciate it. Today we're going to talk about the Build Kansas Fund and get application advice from the committee today. Just some basics about the Build Kansas Fund and what we do in the Infrastructure Hub office. So as you know, the bipartisan infrastructure law was passed a few years ago, and it has 40% of the money goes towards discretionary grant programs, 60% of the money goes towards formula funding. We primarily deal in the discretionary grant side of the program. Our office is here to provide technical assistance to local Kansas agencies around the state with applying for federal grants, federal discretionary grants that are funded by the BIL. We do that in two ways, again, technical assistance, plus we also fund the matches that are required by these federal grants, and we have a $200 million Build Kansas Fund to be able to do that. We have a process for doing that. Local entities apply to us for the Build Kansas Fund. The blue row, light blue row on the slide is our Infrastructure Hub office. We review those applications. They then go to our steering committee, which is a multi-agency steering committee made up of 8 state agencies. They review and approve those applications. Then we bring them here to the advisory committee for your review and approval and advice. Once they are approved, we then wait for the federal award notices. And when those come through, then we notify the state treasurer's office, and they will develop a grant agreement with those entities to reimburse them for those match dollars from the Build Kansas Fund. This slide here, the third slide here, just represents the process that the STO goes through. It looks like a long process, complicated process. It is. But primarily it's structured so that we make sure we get the payments sent out to the local entities in a timely manner and per their grant agreements. This slide here just represents the fact that the federal grant application process runs in parallel with the Build Kansas Fund application process. We recommend to all of our entities that are applying, please get your applications to the Build Kansas Fund in early. One requirement we have is that they have to be turned into us before the federal grant deadline. But we do recommend they get their applications to the Build Kansas Fund done early so that we can get them an award letter once we get through the advisory committee process. They can include that in their grant application, and that always looks better in their federal grant application to have that award letter from us, shows backing from the state of Kansas for their matching dollars. Just to note, we don't select projects. People can apply for federal grants without the Build Kansas Fund or without technical assistance from our office. We are an additive-only service from the state of Kansas, and we, again, provide that technical assistance and the match dollars for the federal grants. All right, first thing I want to go through is the wins we've had through the Build Kansas Fund over the last 2 months, and there's been quite a few. And when I say wins, these are actual federal grant awards. 2 projects that we funded the match dollars with the Build Kansas Fund. These first few slides here are actually a list of all of the what they call 4101D projects. And these were approved back in April by the advisory committee. Those awards came through about a month ago, and 11 projects were awarded federal funding through the Kansas Commerce Commission and the Department of Energy. These 11 projects are for small rural electric cooperatives or small town cooperatives here in the state of Kansas. You can see we've had them from Arc Valley Electric Cooperative, City of Blue Mound, City of Anthony, City of Garden City, City of Horton, City of Pratt, Victory Electric Cooperative, Heartland Rural Electric Cooperative, and 3 more here, the City of Attica, Pioneer Electric Cooperative, and Holton Electric. Again, 11 of those awards through the 4101D program. Those 11 projects were a total of $5,794,730 in Build Kansas funding. That resulted in $11,989,098 in federal funding back to the state of Kansas. There was another program called SS4A, or Safe Streets and Roads for All, that were recently announced, and there were 4 wins for the state of Kansas there. Again, these all had contributions from the Build Kansas Fund. Our Kansas City had a safety action plan. Dickinson County had a county safety action plan. Osage County had a comprehensive safety action plan, and City of Ogden had a safety action plan. Again, these 4 projects were all Build Kansas funded. That resulted in $264,500 in Build Kansas funding, which brought back in $1,148,000 in federal grant dollars into the state. And there were some minor applicant contributions to these as well, per the new rules that we enacted in July, asking applicants to provide a small amount of local funding towards these projects. The one exception there is Osage County. For regional projects, we do not require a local match, as we do try to encourage regional projects. The final program, the Airport Infrastructure Grant Program, we had 4 awards in the past month through this program. City of Independence is doing taxiway reconstruction. Coffee County has a taxiway rehabilitation project. Morton County has a taxiway lighting project. And the City of Hutchinson has a taxiway rehabilitation project. Those 4 projects used $193,248 in Build Kansas funding, which brought back in $1,739,235 in federal funding back to the state of Kansas. And then just graphically, just so you can see where all these projects are distributed across the state, the dark stars are the 4101D grid resilience projects. Primarily wire replacement, transformer replacement, pole replacement, essentially grid upgrades. The red dots are the SS4A awards, the 4 awards in the state of Kansas, and then the green triangles are the airport infrastructure grant awards across the state of Kansas. It's not all good news. We do get projects that don't get selected for federal awards, and we did have 3 of our projects not get selected. One was the Leavenworth Waterworks Board for their self-treatment plant resiliency project. That project was not selected for a BRIC grant. That money, Build Kansas Fund had approved $10 million as match. That money will get restored back to the Build Kansas Fund. Osage County had a transload facility through the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements, or CRISI grant program. That Build Kansas funding of $148,634 will get restored back to the Build Kansas Fund. And then Spring Hill had applied for a Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation project in the city, and that matched dollars that was approved by the Build Kansas Fund of $434,016 will get restored to the Build Kansas Fund. Are there any questions on any of those?
Representative Helgerson.
Does the federal government say why they rejected the 3?
They do. So what they'll do is they'll offer up a chance for these local agencies to do a debrief with that federal agency, and they'll give them reasons why they did not select those projects. I haven't heard about any debriefs being done on these yet, nor the reasons why they were not selected. I will say the Spring Hill Safe Streets and Roads for All, that is a super competitive program. That one is a very hard grant to win. Now, you notice that we did get awarded 4 planning grants in that same category. That's actually pretty, I would say, not to say easy, but it is low-hanging fruit in the grant world. I mean, most applicants do get approved for those smaller planning grants in the SS4A category, but the implementation grants in that category are very competitive.
Any other further questions? All right, seeing none, Mr. Vols.
All right. So with all those awards, just to give you an update on the health of the Build Kansas Fund. To date, we have approved 65 applications. We'll have 4 more that we're going to be putting up for approval today. 31 have been awarded federal grants now. 10 were not awarded federal grants, and this is over the last year. And then we have 24 that are awaiting federal grants. And that's probably the hardest part of this process is the cycle to get these applications reviewed and approved is rather long. So we do have quite a few out there that are still waiting for award. As far as dollar value goes, the ones that have been approved have resulted in $29 million of Build Kansas funds being used. The ones that are awaiting award are equal to $23.23 million of Build Kansas funds, and the ones that have been not awarded have resulted in $42.21 million that will be restored back to the Build Kansas Fund. And by the way, these are new dashboards we're using. These are all on our website now. As far as total value of projects that the Build Kansas Fund is involved with, the green in this donut chart indicates the $29 million worth of Build Kansas funding that has gone towards awarded projects. The blue is the federal funding that has been brought back to the state of Kansas, $45.99 million, and then the red is the locals' contribution to these projects. So it totals just over $100 million worth of project value. As far as return on investment goes, again, that $29 million Build Kansas funding has brought back just under $46 million worth of federal funding for a return on investment of 158%. Another dashboard that we have shows where all these projects are located around the state. This might be a little bit hard to read, but the green dots on that map represent awarded projects. The yellow dots represent projects we're still awaiting award notice from the federal government. And then the chart on the lower right, the one part of the legislation is that we have to invest at least $10 million in each of the 8 economic development districts around the state. That chart just shows where each of the districts sit with respect to that $10 million. And you can see the Great Plains District has already exceeded that. They had a rather large project award here this summer. But you can see the amounts, the green is awarded and the yellow is what we're awaiting award on. We're still early in the program and those others will catch up as we get more applications and more federal awards. In terms of breaking this down even further by infrastructure sector, the 31 that have been awarded a federal grant, 15 of those have been in transportation, 11 have been in energy, 3 have been in resilience, and 2 have been in water. And the ones that we're awaiting award on, again, more in the transportation side, 15, 6 in resilience, 2 in energy, and 1 in the water sector. And breaking it down even further, this is another dashboard on our site. As far as the amount of money that's been committed from the Build Kansas Fund to date, again, just over $29 million, or 15% of the $200 million has been committed. We've received, the lower left is how many applications we've received in both 2024 and fiscal years 2024 and 2025. The number of federal awards so far is 31, and then the federal funding unlocked again is just under $46 million. Any questions there?
Any questions? All right, seeing none, may proceed.
One question that was asked, Senator Schallenberger had asked this question about the number of projects that we fund for implementation and planning through the Build Kansas Fund. The last time we met, we had a lot of planning projects that were up for consideration. And the question came up, do we only fund planning projects? No, is the answer. This slide here shows that of the 65 projects that we have committed funding to, 48 have been for implementation projects, 15 have been for planning, and the 2 hybrid, that is in that Safe Streets and Roads for All grant category, where they are a planning / project demonstration type of grant award. So that's why the 2 hybrid are on there. But you can see the majority of our projects are implementation. And then if you look at it from a funding perspective, how much the Build Kansas Fund has been committed, 95% of our money gets committed towards implementation projects, and then 5% goes towards the hybrid and the planning projects. And those are always a little bit lower dollar than the implementation projects, obviously. Any questions on that?
Seeing none?
Schedule-wise, one thing we do appreciate the committee going to a regular schedule for these meetings. It really helps us out in planning out our steering committee meetings and giving our applicants a date to submit their applications by. This schedule here, or the calendar here, just shows the Legislative Advisory Committee meetings that are taking place on the third Wednesday of the month. What we're going to start doing in January is we're going to structure our steering committee meetings to be on the second and fourth Wednesdays. Therefore, we don't have any conflicts. This month, well, last month, this month, next month, today we have both the advisory committee as well as a steering committee meeting later this afternoon. So it's quite a bit on this particular Wednesday of the month. But next month, again, or January, I'm sorry, we will go to a different structure that will keep those things separate on the calendar and really allow the steering committee to review applications and then give us time to get them over to the advisory committee for approval the following week. All right, if there are no further questions, we can jump right into recommendations.
I'm not seeing any questions, so please proceed.
All right, so today we have 4 applications we're bringing before you for advice. One is through the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program. One is through the Airport Infrastructure Grant Program. One is through the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, or RAISE program. And then one is through the Water Smart Water and Energy Efficiency Program. The first one is from the applicant. The applicant's name is the KC Digital Drive. Again, this is through the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program. And what they would like to do is to get a grant to be, and this organization works both in Kansas and Missouri, but they want to get a grant from the Build Kansas Fund or application, or matching dollars from the Build Kansas Fund for this particular grant application for work on the Kansas side of the Kansas City, Missouri area. They're requesting $804,968 from the Build Kansas Fund. Locally, they're going to be contributing with an in-kind match $1,228,877. And then they'll have an additional cash contribution in the future of $381,060. That'll unlock $5,634,782 in federal funds for a total project cost of $8,049,688. This project has a federal required match of 10%. Build Kansas request amount is 10% of their total project cost. Again, this is a total project cost on the Kansas side of the state line. This particular grant program does give you credit if you have higher than 10% and up to 30%, and they will give you more credit and the scoring at the federal level. So that's why they are contributing so much of their own funding towards this particular grant application. Again, this project will provide digital literacy, equipment, training to low-income, underserved communities, veterans, to provide them, again, digital training, computer skills, give them more of a chance of getting jobs in the Kansas City metro area. And so we bring this today for advice. It was reviewed and approved by our steering committee and on October 18th, and they did recommend it for approval. So we bring it to you today for your final advice.
So since this is being actually submitted by an entity in the Missouri side, but it's for Wyandotte County, so it's going to be with the zip codes on the Kansas side. I just want to make sure that if we're using Kansas money, we're using it for Kansas purposes.
Yeah, and that was a big question at our steering committee meeting, and we made sure of that. 41% of their total project cost is on the Kansas side of the state line. All of these project costs are on the Kansas side, and we asked them to make sure any of the money that is being used from the Build Kansas Fund is being used for infrastructure. So that's going to be for computers, training facilities, hardware, materials. We didn't want any of the money to go towards salaries of people who are employed on the Missouri side. Yep.
Any questions in regards to this application? Senator Schallenberger.
you walk me through a little, so this is they've applied for a federal grant to build what? Is this going to be, can you elaborate?
Yeah.
Mr. Bolts?
Sure. So as far as building, they'll be using the money to purchase computer equipment, build training facilities, equip meeting rooms, and do essentially digital literacy training. Ultimately, they'll be using broadband, of course, to train these folks. So therefore, it falls into the broadband category.
Senator Schellenberger?
So you asked them you said you wanted to make sure that our match went for infrastructure, but how much of the total cost of this project is hardware?
Yeah, we've got a budget breakdown on the back of the application. So it's a mixed budget in the fact that it has a Missouri component and a Kansas component. 41% is the total project cost, $8,049,688 is on the Kansas side. That's 41% of their total project cost. Now, of that total cost, what we've said is that the Build Kansas funding of $804,000 has to go towards infrastructure. Now, how much of that, or how much more than the $804,000 is going towards infrastructure, I don't exactly have that. But we've told them we want to ensure that that money does go towards infrastructure and not towards salaries.
So,
Yes, Senator Schellenberger?
so they could be spending $800,000 on hardware and the rest on teachers and software and stuff. But we know that our grant is only for hardware, for infrastructure.
Correct. I mean, it could be hardware, it could be software. I mean, it's going to be hard goods, as I would put it.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Helgerson?
You said this is a joint operation. Has Missouri appropriated the money?
So they don't have any funding from Missouri government for the grant on that side. They're using all in-kind match from their Missouri participants. We've not seen any state of Missouri money go towards this grant.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to say, so is that the list that is on page 6?
Correct.
Where it says it's coming from these different entities? Some are from Kansas side, and then regional are a lot of foundations that are on the Missouri side.
Correct.
Representative Helgerson?
I'm familiar with the project that we ponied up some money for a construction project, and Missouri didn't follow through with their money. I'm more than a little concerned with Missouri not coming forward with some of the money.
Yeah.
And in this case, we're putting up the money and they're putting up just in-kind contributions and in-kind from both sides.
Yeah, the Missouri side, I have to look at the details. They may have some cash contributions from some private foundations on the Missouri side as well. But this grant doesn't require any government participation. Basically, for the local match, it has to come from a local source, which can be state, local, in-kind, foundations, private money. So it can be a variety of sources of money for this match dollars on the Missouri side as well as on the Kansas side.
Who submitted this?
Digital Drive, Casey.
Digital Drive.
So they're a nonprofit based in Kansas City. Their location, their address is actually in Kansas City, Missouri, but they serve both sides of the state line.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Any comments, further comments? I think we just want to make certain that if we allocate money from the Build Kansas Fund, that is going towards the Kansas portion of this. That's, I think, the biggest consternation that we're hearing.
Yeah, and that was a discussion point amongst our steering committee, and that was one thing we stressed to the applicant as well.
Okay. Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday was Madam Chairman. Sorry about that. Yeah. I'm looking on page 18 of the budget that you put together. So it looks like that the 800 million that they're looking, some of it is salaries. I mean, it looks like they're not really building anything. There's a little bit of, so what's the plan? This is just a one-time grant, right?
I mean, it could be a one-time grant. They could apply again for it. I mean, in future years.
If they're hiring a lot of people, looks like, or they're paying them a lot, one or the other, $563,000 in salaries are what this 800,000 is going to go towards, basically. I mean, if we're getting them 800,000, about 563 is going to go to salaries.
Yeah, but we stress to them, we don't want the money to go towards salaries. We want the money to go towards equipment, hardware, software, offices, training facilities.
But we really don't know. I mean, it's all going to get mixed in anyway.
Well, yeah, I suppose you could say that, yeah. There's not these separate little buckets they're going to be able to pull money out of, but.
Right. I don't know. I'm not real excited about this one, but after looking at it a little bit more, but I don't know.
Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in previous grants, I don't remember all of them, did they specifically go just to the infrastructure part of it, or did it also go to labor or salaries and such?
Yeah, we've never had a grant from this organization through the Build Kansas Fund previously. I did talk to the Department of Commerce, Office of Broadband Development about this particular organization, and they were very positive about them. They said they do great things. They've used funding from the Department of Commerce before, and they gave it a glowing recommendation.
So follow-up, please.
Yes, Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have an issue with it going to this particular organization, mainly because of the digital component of it. It's hard to say. I don't know what kind of oversight we have as far as if they're adhering to our requirements for it not to go to specific salaries or just to stay on the Kansas side. If there are ways that we can do that type of oversight, that would be great. But I also know, I was wondering why they didn't apply to something like the BEAD grant or to the Office of Broadband Services. I feel like this would fit more into that type of an organization, unless they already did, and this is the second or third part of that.
Yeah, I saw in their application where they said they had applied to Department of Commerce, but they had not received funding through a certain program through the Department of Commerce. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative Hoffman.
I'm going to make a motion to deny this particular one. To me, this is not what this is not a project like what we were looking at when we put this fund together, and it's only 4,000 and 200 million, but that's still quite a little bit of money. So I'm going to make a motion that we do not approve this particular application.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. We have a second by Representative Helgerson. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Representative Hoffman, you may close on your motion.
I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. One comment that I would make in regards to this, Mr. Volz, is that if they would want to resubmit an application, make sure that I would ensure that they have the funding secured on the Missouri side on how those funds are going to be utilized and who those funds came from. Because obviously in other applications we've denied, we do want them to come back and possibly apply again. But I think they need to have in regards to Representative Helgerson's comments, have those dollars secured on the Missouri side.
Yeah, I think they do have the money secured on the Missouri side, but again, it's not from the state, it's from private sector or foundations or in-kind match.
All right. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next application, and that is Miami County Airport Project. Mr. Volz.
Yep, this is an airport infrastructure grant, similar to the ones we've discussed in the past. It's for the Miami County Airport. It's for surface treatment of runway 3/21, connector taxiway and apron rehabilitation, asphalt overlay. This application was received on June 10th, 2024, reviewed by our steering committee on October 23rd, 2024, and recommended. They are requesting $40,639 in Build Kansas funding. They have a local contribution of $2,139. The federal funding unlocked for this will be $385,000 for a total project cost of $427,778. This project is a 10% match. Build Kansas Fund is providing 9.5% of that match, and they're providing the 0.5% of that match. And so we are bringing it for you today for final advice.
All right, committee, are there any questions for Mr. Volz? Seeing none, and how we've done things in the past, since there are no questions or motion, we'll move on. This will be forwarded on by consensus. So the next application, the Port Authority of Stafford County. Mr. Volz.
Yeah, this is the Port Authority of Stafford County, or PASC. This is for a transload facility. A transload facility is a rail highway loading facility or interface for loading from rail to truck or from truck to rail. This is in Stafford County. They're requesting $5 million from the Build Kansas Fund. They have $2.5 million worth of local contribution. The federal funding unlocked, their request is $25 million from the RAISE program for the US DOT for a total project cost of $32,500,000. $25 million is the max you can request from the RAISE program. This project is unusual in the fact that they had applied for the RAISE program in early 2024. They'd applied to the Build Kansas Fund previously in early 2024 for $5 million. It was approved at that time. When the RAISE program came out again here 2 weeks ago, one of the conditions was that projects that were listed as projects of merit could resubmit their applications from the previous round. This project was actually rated as a project of merit by US DOT, meaning basically you didn't get funded, but we really liked your project. So they've encouraged these projects of merit, designated projects around the country to resubmit their applications. And they can resubmit them, but they can't make any changes. They can't make any changes to their budget or to their funding. So essentially what we're doing is we're returning this application back up to the advisory committee for review and approval. And again, for the same amount, $5 million for a match, and then they'll receive $25 million in federal funding from US DOT. So we actually reviewed this project on November 6th. The steering committee did, and the steering committee did recommend it. So we bring it to you today for final advice.
All right, committee questions in regards to this application. Senator Schallenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this was on your chart as one that had been rejected,
This was, yeah, it had been declined by the
declined,
federal
and the money
government.
come back, and we'll put the money back, and away we go.
Yeah.
Great,
Correct.
thanks.
Any further questions? Any other comments? All right, seeing none, by consensus, this one is being forwarded on. And now to the final application from the city of Harper and the city of Anthony. Mr. Volz.
This project is from the city of Harper and the city of Anthony, a joint application with city of Harper being the lead applicant. They're applying for a Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Water and Energy Efficiency grant to replace water meters and electric meters in both of those cities. This is a 50% project match requirement on this particular grant program. So they're requesting $1,086,465 from the Build Kansas Fund. They have a local contribution of $57,182. The federal funding that will be unlocked is $1,143,648 for a total project cost of $2,287,296. Now, I would note that they were not required to provide a local match because they are a regional application, but they chose to do so out of good faith. So again, this project will replace water meters, electric meters, upgrade them to basically modern standards, replace water meters that are old, aged, maybe are causing some leakage in their system by not being accurate, and then will also allow remote reading of those water meters, saving those cities time and effort in reading meters. So we reviewed this project with the steering committee on November 6th. It was recommended for approval, and so we bring it to you today for final advice.
All right, committee, any questions for Mr. Volz? All right, seeing none, this one will be forwarded on by consensus to the federal government. Okay, that concludes all the applications that we have. Next item on the agenda, is there any committee discussion, advice on the recommendations? Representative Helgerson.
This is the first time we've had a chance to visit since the election. And I've heard comments that there are individuals in DC that are looking at curtailing some of the grants and looking at clawbacks on some of the money that may have been allocated. Are we in any jeopardy on any of the programs, or should we be changing our procedures in order to deal with the changes in DC?
Mr. Volz.
Yeah, it's really hard to say at this point. I mean, it's very speculative. There's always been some people that have always wanted to claw back on the discretionary grant programs. But, you know, we've really heard nothing yet. And we are actually investigating with our sources in Washington, D.C., trying to get information, but they just really haven't had much to go on yet. So we're staying the course at this point until we get more facts.
Thank you.
Any other further discussion? The only other thing that I would mention is if you look on your schedule that Mr. Volz provided in his testimony, that our next meeting is scheduled to be December 18th. We're going to try to keep that date, but I know we already have another meeting that's going to be scheduled that day. So what we might do is not have that meeting starting until after this meeting has concluded. So we'll still try to keep December 18th as the next meeting day. But obviously, if anything should change, we'll let you know. All right, seeing no further discussion, we are adjourned.